Lee was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and grew up in San Diego, where the family relocated to when he was a child. His father is of Welsh ancestry, and his mother is of Japanese ancestry. He was encouraged by his mother to take classical piano lessons when he was approximately 6 years old. He had little interest in piano, but at the age of 13, Lee began playing a guitar belonging to his older sister and became increasingly interested in learning the instrument. In his early teens, he was introduced to the likes of Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin by way of his older sister's record collection, and this music greatly influenced his guitar playing. The first song he learned was No Time by the Guess Who. From there, he learned from a Mel Bay guitar method book and used his knowledge of music theory from his piano training to become proficient at guitar. He subsequently played in several high school bands, soon impressing fellow San Diego musicians with his style of playing. In San Diego, Lee formed a band called Teaser, named after Tommy Bolin's debut solo album. Teaser would become the house band at a San Diego all-ages club called Straight Ahead Sound. In 1980, Lee joined a local heavy metal band called Mickey Rat, who soon shortened their name to Rat and relocated to the Sunset Strip of Los Angeles. They released the single Dr. Rock or Drivin' on E, which was given away for free to fans at their live shows. The song Tell the World was included on the original pressing of the first Metal Massacre compilation album in 1982, a highly influential album, which also featured the first recording from Metallica. Not long after arriving in Los Angeles, Lee left Rat to join a glam metal band called Sexist, reuniting with childhood friend and fellow guitarist Doug Pittum. Approximately 8 months later, Lee received an offer to join Rough Cut, after being recommended by drummer and former Rat bandmate Dave Alford in late 1982. Former Black Sabbath vocalist Ronnie James Dio was putting together a solo project with Jimmy Bain and Vinny Appice, and was impressed with Lee after seeing a Rough Cut show in Los Angeles and invited the guitarist to join. Though Lee had believed Rough Cut's future was promising, he felt the offer to join Dio was too good to pass up, though his time in the band would ultimately be short-lived. According to Appice, there were rehearsals with Lee, and recordings of those rehearsals still exist, but nothing more came from this first version of the band. Lee claims that Dio wanted him to play simple block chords that wouldn't trample on his vocals, and cited creative differences for the split. When Ozzy Osbourne sought a replacement for guitarist Brad Gillis, Los Angeles bassist Dana Strum recommended Lee for the job. After auditioning, Osbourne was torn between Lee and Dokken guitarist George Lynch. Osbourne initially chose Lynch, but quickly changed his mind. Upon telling Lee he had the job, he then informed the guitarist that he had to tell Lynch he was fired. With bassist Bob Daisley, Lee subsequently began composing music and recording the 1983 album Bark at the Moon. The songs So Tired and Bark at the Moon were released as singles with accompanying videos, and they received regular airplay on MTV and radio. To date, the album has sold 3 million copies in the US. Though Lee had composed a significant amount of the album's music, he was allegedly cheated out of his writing and publishing claims by Osbourne's wife and manager Sharon. Lee claims that after he had composed the songs and completed recording his parts in the studio, he was presented with a contract which stated that he would have no claim to any writing or publishing relating to the album. The contract also stated that Lee could not speak publicly about the matter. He claims he signed the contract because he had no legal representation and because Sharon threatened to fire him and have another guitarist re-record his parts if he refused. In 1987, after touring with Ozzy Osbourne in support of the album The Ultimate Sin, Lee was fired suddenly via telephone by Sharon Osbourne. Lee was caught off guard by the firing, having been under the impression that he had a solid working relationship with Ozzy. Regarding Lee's firing, Osbourne has said that he had no personal issues with the guitarist whatsoever, but claimed that the dismissal happened after drummer Randy Castillo began to turn against Lee. Lee himself has said that bassist Phil Soussan was trying to convince Osbourne to let him be the band's primary songwriter, while also discouraging him from using Lee's material, and that Soussan was partly instrumental in getting me fired. After being fired from Ozzy Band, Lee formed the blues-based hard rock band Badlands with vocalist Ray Gillen in 1988. Badlands consisted of Lee, Gillen, drummer Eric Singer, and bassist Greg Chasin. the band released their self-titled debut album in 1989. In 1991, Singer left Badlands to join Kiss. Following the death of longtime drummer Eric Carr, Badlands then released the follow-up album Voodoo Highway. During a tour between that album and the upcoming third album they were ready to begin recording, Gillan left the band and was briefly replaced by John West. Gillan later died of AIDS-related complications in 1993. In 1998, Dusk, the final Badlands album, consisting of unreleased live in-studio 24-track demos, was released in Japan. A European release followed in 2000. Following the demise of Badlands, Lee opted for a radical musical departure and teamed with World War III vocalist Mandy Lyon in a new band called Wicked Alliance. The initial lineup also featured future Korn drummer Ray Luzier and bassist Jimmy Bain, who was replaced with Brian Perry, formerly of Dirty Looks, and Lizzie Borden, in time for the band's one and only U.S. tour in early 1994. The band also cut a 3-song demo with Joe Floyd of Warrior at Silver Cloud Studios in Burbank, CA. In 1996, Lee released an instrumental solo album titled A Fine Pink Mist on the Pony Canyon label in Japan, with the intention of also releasing the Wicked Alliance album through the same company. However, Lee and Lyon never finished the album, and no tracks from it have surfaced to date. In short, in 2013, Lee formed a new band called Red Dragon Cartel. Their self-titled debut album was released in January 2014. While appearing on that metal show on VH1 Classic, Jake E. Lee claimed he wrote Bark at the Moon, for which Ozzy Osbourne claimed credit. Along with the rest of that album, Lee and Daisley were properly credited for their writing on the Ultimate Sin album.